let's talk a little bit about adaptogenic mushrooms, which Sian, let's talk a little bit about that and how you use them, and maybe a definition of what they are.
Yeah. So adaptogenic mushrooms are typically edible mushrooms that you can incorporate either into your food, or you can extract the active constituents in them, the things that heal, the therapeutic components of that particular mushroom, into something like a tincture, or you can make it into like a salve or some other kind of medicinal product that you can use to heal. The way I've been using them has been, so I'm at this phase in my life where I'm perimenopausal. I'm 48 years old, and I'm losing my mind. No, I'm just, my memory has gotten really bad. And so it was sort of one of those moments where I was like, can I use mushrooms to heal? And I found a lot of mushrooms like lion's mane and chaga and cordyceps and shiitake that have been great, that I can combine with other herbs. So then I'm combining them with ginkgo biloba and gotu kola, and these other herbs that have been proven to, or clinically proven to, help stimulate brain activity, stimulate, well, for instance, lion's mane doesn't look like a mushroom at all, but it's really beautiful, and it's used a lot in Asian cooking. And there are studies out there that prove that it stimulates neuronal growth factor, which means that you can grow new neurons. All of that scientific background is so important to me to show that there's actual proof, or that there's evidence out there that these things are working. And so for me, that's a really important part, is to find the research that supports that when I use adaptogenic mushrooms.
Christina, how do you incorporate adapted mushrooms into your work? And also cannabis, like how infusions, how do you do it?
So I've been actually taking cordyceps mushrooms I've had a nasty cough and a cold for about a week. And instead of taking decongestants and other pharmaceuticals, I've been taking cordyceps for lung health. I've been doing a lot of eucalyptus. So a lot of these like natural health, they're there. And even as you were talking, Sian, I was thinking about my mom. And, every time I see my mom, she's like, makes me soup. She's like, oh, yum tong, yum tong. And all of the soups always have, here's this one for han cut. That's right, like a cough. You drink this kind of thing. You use longan, you use these different mushrooms. And for me, like I do a lot of mushrooms in like adaptogenic mushrooms in baking, even psychedelic ones, with cannabis, with cannabis specifically, oil is the carrier, oils and fats. So I'll infuse cannabis into oils and fats. I actually just updated a cannabis tea recipe for Thrillist. I'm a contributing cannabis food and drink travel writer for Thrillist. And their cannabis tea recipe is really popular because a lot of times, like, the cannabis edibles on the market are all sugar or chocolate for the most part. And people are looking for something different. They don't want to eat I'm even getting tired of all the sugar. And so having something that's sugar-free, like a cannabis tea, is really attractive. It's good for sleep. It's good for daytime. So there's all different ways. And I'm still learning. I'm very new to this as well. And, there's so many people who've been doing this for so long that I'm a lifelong student. I'm still learning, but I'm taking what I'm learning and applying it into making beautiful modern desserts, so that when you present somebody with an edible, it's not like this weird yucky looking pot brownie. It's this really beautiful dessert, and it's something that you can show, and it's like, oh, what, like that's infused. Someone's more willing to try it, and properly dosed, and that's not like mystery potency, but something that's really beautiful, doesn't seem as intimidating to try.
I wanted to.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sian.
I just wanted to also step in and define adaptogens, because some people may not know what an adaptogen is. And so what adaptogens do in your body, whether it's an herb or a mushroom or something else, it'll basically go into your system, and your body has a really good way of knowing what it needs, right? Oftentimes, if we're thirsty, we drink some water. If we are feeling like we need more protein, we may want to eat more meat or something like that. Or other herbs we're attracted to, vegetables we're attracted to, because our body has that need for some kind of a vitamin or a mineral or something that we're missing. And so adaptogens basically bring our body back into balance, and essentially do what they're supposed to do. They're really magical in that they really sort of address the insufficiency you might have in your body and sort of help to correct it, bringing it back to balance.
That's amazing because both of you are at the forefront of all of this. And so let's even go a little more further into the future. And my last question for you guys is, for both of you, Christina, you can start. Where do you see, we now know where cannabis is moving towards for the API community and the acceptance of that. Where do you see the next thing for psychedelics? Let's maybe narrow that down to mushrooms, right? Because that is more relatable for TCM. Where do you see the future of that, of acceptance in our community? And that's a question for both of you. Christina, first.
I think that there's definitely a renaissance and a reinterest right now in mushrooms, all different kinds of mushrooms in every form. And I mean, part of it's a fad, but also I think there's a lot to it, and being able to introduce it in ways and provide the science, which is why I love what Sian is doing, providing that, right? It's like, I know that my mom makes me this soup because it's supposed to be good for this, but I don't know the science behind it. And now we get to learn the science. And for us, we are in I'm about to turn 40. That's a lot. But, I'm starting to look at, right, I'm starting to go to therapy. I'm starting to work through my things. And psilocybin, mushrooms, cannabis, all of that, and all the other psychedelics in partnership with as a therapeutic use. I think that's huge because it's part of healing. It's part of all of us healing and trying to find balance and center. And those really, really help. I think we are more stressed out. We are more anxious than ever before. Family pressures, societal pressures, work, life, everything, right? I think like we can all relate to that, where we have, for me as an AAPI woman, there's expectations being placed on that, right? You're supposed to get married, you're supposed to have a job, you're supposed to do this, there's this path we're supposed to take. And yet, for those of us who don't feel that that's right for us, that's really difficult. And so I think mushrooms have a really great path for many of us to start to explore that, to be able to have those conversations. And I've been reading, so Michael Pollan, who's a really wonderful, prolific author, who I admired a lot. So I spent a lot of my career in food and culinary with chefs, and he wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma, which changed the way I think about our food systems. And so the recent books that he's been writing is How to Change Your Mind with Plants, and it's how to change your mind and your mind on plants. And it's all about exploring psychedelics. And it's been so fascinating because the research that had been done on all of this just stopped. And so we don't have information, and it's just starting again now. So as more research comes up, I think that there's really going to be a place in the API community as we become more comfortable putting this in tandem with therapy. I mean, even going to therapy is already really hard. Seeing a therapist in API culture is very taboo. So once we can kind of push past that and use those two in tandem together, I think the amount of healing that we can do is incredible. And that's where I
You
see
touched on
it.
a good point there because minorities in general are very traumatized because how we got here, what we went through, and all that trauma is inherited. So hopefully, with the advent of the use of psilocybin, we can help our community. So, Sian, where do you see the future of psychedelics?
So I think Oregon being the first state to sort of really embrace psychedelics, I think is going to be a model, much in the way that California has been kind of a model for, good or bad, has been a model for cannabis. Obviously, the first step is whether you use it with a clinical psychologist or some kind of a medical professional. That's probably going to be the first step, I would say, for most states as they adopt it and decriminalize. And obviously in California, there's several cities that are starting to explore that, and some have already. But I think, it's interesting from an AAPI point of view, it's now, we all have gone through a lot of trauma as children, being so conspicuously different, looking, not only just the way we look, but also our cultures, our food, the foods that we eat. And, we all sort of had some bullying, and maybe we were made fun of based on those things. And I think a lot of us had to deny that part of ourselves growing up out of survival, you know, and now as adults, being able to come back and embrace that heritage, embrace that culture, and see the value of the historical use of plants and mushrooms in particular has been really profound for me. And so that's why one of the reasons why I want to get into it, because I see such a benefit to society and the healing that has happened, you know, through organizations like MAPS, for instance, and all the good work that they're doing. And how can I be a face of my community to be able to showcase that, you know, this is happening this can be used in our community and we can be good stewards of that. And how can I help to encourage healing of generational trauma through the use of plants and psychedelics?
I love all of that because right now we're all being inundated with images of ravey looking chocolates or things like that. And for me, the issue is that is not, it is medicine. And right now, the short term, like you mentioned, short term, people are seeing it as more as an industry that they can get into and not really looking at the benefits. So that I set aside. But the work that both of you doing are is for the community, is for better health and better mental health. And I'm so proud of both of you for what you're doing and putting yourselves out there to help others and speak about it.